Yep.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another live stream. Today we're going to talk about a couple of updates to the NDIS issues I've been chasing up. But first things first, I really need your support, and you can do that by subscribing to this channel, liking and sharing what you see. If I can get up to 1,000 subscribers, then I can start getting some advertising money through YouTube, which will help financially support this channel. At the moment, I'm doing it all myself, and it's quite expensive, just like on everyone else. Now we're doing it financially hard. To become a subscriber is absolutely free. It takes about 60 seconds of your time. You just go to my YouTube channel and hit subscribe, and then select all notifications. So that's all you need to do. It takes you 60 seconds, and your support would mean a lot. So thank you. A couple of years ago, I put a complaint into the NDIS. I'm not going to divulge what the complaint is yet, because I'm been for nearly 2 years trying to get the results of that complaint. The NDIS are absolutely refusing to do it. So I was forced to go through the Office of the Australian Information Commission. And they are now requiring the NDIS to provide that information. Now, I've got an email from the NDIS yesterday providing 4 documents, 3 of which they said I could have access to under the Freedom of Information Act of 1982. Unfortunately, what they allowed me access to is the correspondence I've had through them with the emails over the last 18 months. And I kept a copy of all those emails anyway. The one they didn't give me access to was the results of my complaint. Now, the reason for their denial was because, 1, it may reveal the processes and investigation tools that they use. And 2, it may be embarrassing to the NDIA. So I sent an email back off to the OAIC yesterday saying I was not happy with the outcome. I'm not after the process or how they investigate. I'm simply after the results of the investigation, what the findings are, and so I can escalate it up the ladder, which I'm allowed to do. But the second point is, I just said that it may be embarrassing to the NDIA. Well, that's totally irrelevant under the Freedom of Information Act. I don't care if it's embarrassing. That's the whole point. If it's embarrassing, then obviously they've done something wrong and they're trying to cover it up. Now, if they wanted to shut me up and keep me quiet, what they should have done was come out and said, yes, we found that your complaint was founded or unfounded, and if it was founded, we're going to do A, B, and C to try to rectify it. Then I would have let it go. I would have kept in contact to see what processes they're going through to make the changes. But no, they're using every trick in the book to not provide me the information that I'm legally allowed to access under the Freedom of Information Act of 1982. Now, I sent the letter off to the Information Commission yesterday. I haven't had a response yet, probably won't do for the next couple of days, but I am not going to let this go. The more they keep doing this, the more it pushes me to dig my heels in and the more stubborn I become. I am not going to let it go. So if anyone from the NDIA is watching this, bite me. I'm not giving up. I'm not going away, and I won't keep quiet. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I found out that when you call the NDIS, the people who answer the phones don't work for the NDIS. They actually work for a third-party call centre contractor called Serco, Serco. I was gobsmacked when I found this out, absolutely shocked, because there's one thing I'm an absolute stickler for, is my privacy and confidentiality. I don't want strangers accessing my personal private data. Now, when I first went on the NDIS, they wanted to know everything, and with the personal stuff, I objected, and they said, well, either you give it to us or you don't. If you don't, you can't get onto the NDIS. So they blackmailed and extorted me to get the information, in my opinion. Well, that's what I truly do believe. So I had one person from the NDIS, 2 LACs, and 2 other support people. I was absolutely embarrassed and humiliated giving up that information. Prior to that, only myself and my doctor knew everything. Now, that's gone from 2 people to how many, I don't know. Now, the reason I object to Serco having access to my information, these call centres, they probably work from home. I don't know what they do with their computer when they're not working. They could be downloading porn, as far as I know. They might have malware on their computer, might have a Trojan horse on the computer, spyware. I don't know. Nobody knows. The government doesn't do regular audits. They don't go to the people's houses and physically go through their computer to see what they've been doing while they've been accessing people's data. That's what I have an issue with. So on the 11th of March this year, I sent an email to privacy@ndis.gov.au saying that I just found out about Serco. I now withdraw my consent for Serco and any other third-party contractors accessing my personal private data. Now, I have to give them 30 days. So if I haven't heard from them by the 11th of April, I'll go on up the ladder yet again. But that's not it. That's not the end of the story. Now, every time I rang the NDIS, I asked, do you work for Serco or do you work for the NDIA? And they sort of and a little bit, but when I call the NDIS number, they say, well, yeah, I do work for Serco. I say, thank you for being honest, I do appreciate it. I don't want you accessing my personal data, but we can't help you. Oh, that's okay. Who do I need to contact who actually works for the NDIA? Is not a third-party contractor. And I was told the other day to go through the Quality and Safeguards Commission. They actually work for the NDIA staff. So I rang 9:01 a.m. Wednesday last week. Now, as soon as they answered the phone, my first question was, do you work for Serco or another third-party contractor or the NDIA? Oh, well, I can't answer that question. I said, well, no. Under the Privacy Act of 1980, was it 1988 or 1992?
88.
Privacy Act of 1988. If I ask you who you work for, do you work for the NDIA or a Serco or a third party? You have to answer honestly. All I can tell you is that I'm an NDIA staff officer. I said, I know Serco contracts out to the NDIA, but do you work for Serco or do you work for the NDIA? I can only tell you I'm an NDIS staff officer. Again, I asked the same question. So I asked this question like 4 or 5 times. She refused to answer. So I said, okay, well, I was contacted the week prior because I put an application in for some adaptive technology.
That's all right.
So, and it was refused. And my support coordinator is off maternity leave, so they rang me and said, oh, look, the application was denied. And I said, well, why was it denied? So this bloke read the letter out to me of why I was denied. It's because these items were denied because you had supports for these tasks. So this is like replacement support. So that I get these things, so I don't need supports. Well, that's what the outcome was. So he said, oh, I'll send you the letter, which I never got. So that's why I made that phone call to the NDIS, then to the Quality and Safeguards Commission. I wanted a copy of that letter. So she organised the letter to be sent, and when she come back to me, and this is like 50 minutes later, that's how long it took, I said, I know you have to answer this question under the Privacy Act of 1988. Do you work for Serco or do you work for the NDIA? All I can tell you is I'm an NDIA staff officer. I said, yes, but do you work for Serco or do you work for the NDIA? Again, I asked them multiple times, oh, I support your decision and blah, blah, this and blah. So I said, okay, you're not going to answer the question, so I'm assuming you work for Serco and you're not allowed to answer. And she wouldn't answer that. So I thanked her and I hung up. Now, later that night, I was thinking, somebody told me that the quality, I sent an email in complaining about this lady not answering my question, who she worked for. I got an email back saying that that's not their role. And I thought about that later that night. I said, well, if the Quality and Safeguards Commission is not the NDIA, how did the Quality and Safeguards Commission call centre contact the NDIS to get that letter I was requesting? Because obviously they work for Serco. So they lied. Denying something or refusing to answer a question is a lie, in my opinion. So I'm now having to force the issue of not talking to Serco, not talking to any LAC because they work for Uniting, and they have the contract to be the LACs. You know, the people I've met were been quite nice, but I don't want strangers accessing my data. It's as simple as that. The government had no right to do this. I don't know whether it was the Labor Party who brought Serco in, it was a coalition. But either way, I no longer give consent for any third-party contractor accessing my information. Now, 2 years ago, in 2024, an NDIA staff member sold people's personal data to some service providers, I think it was in Sydney. And on May 25th last year, that NDIA staff member was found guilty. He didn't go to jail. He got a 2-year good behaviour bond, community service sentence. That's not enough. They breached our trust. They breached our data. Now, everyone's going to think, oh, well, it's never going to happen. It's only once and I won't be. Well, I'd just like to let people know that the Family Law Court have all their files digitised and stored here in Australia, but the backup, it's stored in India. And what happened there? They went in there and got the data and they sold it right around the world. They sold people's information. Now, in the article that we read, it said that this not only was a breach, but it also caused huge problems for people going through the family law court system and for the Australian Federal Police in ASIO. So it happens all the time. And I think it happens so much we just become blind to it. We just accept, oh, well, these things happen. But because it doesn't affect us directly, we don't worry about it. And I used to be the same way. But enough's enough. I don't want strangers accessing my data. It's as simple as that. And I withdraw consent. Now, I've got to wait till the 11th of April to hear back from the NDIS, the privacy people from the NDIA. And I don't think I will, so I'll have to go back to the OAIC yet again, because they haven't even acknowledged that they received the email. Now, Serco, when they got the contract, they earned about $334 million. The Labor government took it off them, then gave it back to them, and they've earned another $250 million so far. And let's look at Salesforce yet again. Now, there were people, senior people of the NDIS, they were wined and dined and given gifts so Salesforce would get the contract. Now, Salesforce, can they do this legally? Yes, they can. But can those people in charge of the NDIS accept those bribes? Well, if it's under $100, yes, they can. And I totally disagree. They shouldn't be getting 1 cent and one gift in a kickback. Now, Salesforce, when it first came out, we're not paying for the use of the software, we're paying for a user license agreement. So every time there's a new participant on the NDIS, whoever's accessing the information has to use a user license to get access to the information. That's where they make the money, from those licenses. Now, when I originally started, it was like $20 million a year. By the end of this decade, it'll be $220 million a year. Now, the NDIS, their office used to be in Melbourne. They used to have 4 floors in this huge office building they used to rent. Was that good enough for them? No. They had to have their own building at a cost of about $500 million. So those 3 things that I just mentioned, that's around about $1.5 billion that hasn't gone to the participants of the NDIS, hasn't gone towards supporting, paying for support workers and service providers and OTs and physios. Now, the government might be doing this to save money. I don't give a bugger. I don't want third-party contractors accessing my information. Those people who did the contracts with Salesforce, do they still work for the NDIA, or do they now work for Salesforce or a sister company of Salesforce? Why did they need to have their own new building for $500 million? I'll tell you why. Because the government doesn't give a bugger about how they spend our money, our taxes. Now, these grubs in Canberra, they all seem to forget they work for us. We don't work for them. We elect them to represent us, to be our representatives. I found out the other day that the Prime Minister's two residences cost the taxpayers $110,000 a year just for electricity. How many mortgages would that help for people who are looking for their own home? If they pulled their finger out, shopped around and got a better deal for cheaper electricity to save the taxpayers money. I mean, these grubs in Canberra, they don't care what they spend their money on. It's not their money. Now, we as people with disabilities, do we get to say to government, no, we've all voted that we can give ourselves a pay rise and we also want money in our super? Can we do that? No. Can those grubs in Canberra do it? Absolutely. They always vote themselves a pay rise. Bigger contribution towards their super. Now, when Susan Lee lost control of the Liberal Party, she had a big dummy spit and quit politics. Another Mark Latham, he did the same thing when he lost his election. But Susan Lee, because she got in before 2004, she now gets between $250,000 and $265,000 a year to the day she dies. The Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, he earns just as much as the US President and the UK Prime Minister combined. We have a population of about 27 million. The US has a population of, 338 million. The UK has a population of about 70 million. So the UK has twice the population. The US has 12 times the population, but our bull-fetted Prime Minister gets the same amount as the UK Prime Minister and the US President combined. Who's wasting money? Stuff those grubs in Canberra. I have absolutely no respect for them. I despise them all. They work for us. They're there to run the country, to make sure we have the infrastructure that we need. Now, the last Prime Minister we had in this country who looked 20, 30 years into the future was John Howard. Now, I never voted for John Howard. Unfortunately, I voted for Kevin Rudd in 2007, and after he got in, I promised myself I'd never vote for Labor again, and I haven't. But John Howard knew that the baby boomers are going to retire soon, and we don't have the ability to support them with an age pension. So that's what the GST was for. He basically paid off Australia's debt, put tens of billions of dollars away for the age pension because he knew the baby boomers are going to retire the next 20, 30 years. We all sacrificed for that to happen. Kevin Rudd comes in 2000, I'll vote for me, I'll give every family $900 and X amount per child. He blew it. We're basically debt-free. And from 2007 right to this minute right now, we're now in $1 trillion worth of debt. $1 trillion. That's the coalition and the Labor government's fault. Now, the other Prime Minister, in my opinion, that done really good for this country is Gough Whitlam back in the 70s. He brought in Medicare. He was doing all this stuff to help people out in this country. So since the end of the Second World War, we've had two decent Prime Ministers, in my opinion. It's Gough Whitlam and John Howard. The rest have been woeful. And I think Albanese, I always thought Kevin Rudd was the worst Prime Minister we've ever had in this country. Albanese now left him behind, way behind. I think Albanese is the worst Prime Minister this country's ever had and probably will ever have. He has his own ideology and he's going to put it onto Australia no matter what it does to this country and what it does to its people. Now, last time that happened with a socialist, in my opinion, Adolf Hitler. And he was responsible for the murder of 6 million Jews. They were gassed, shot, hung, beaten. Hitler pushed his ideology onto his country and tried to take over the world. I mean, Albanese is not going to try and take over the world, but he's done the same thing, pushing his ideology onto this country. Would I like to get away from fossil fuels? Absolutely. Absolutely. But our technology is just not there yet. But he doesn't care. Now, the fuel shortage we have in this country now, I mean, we have basically no manufacturing in this country. And this has been going on for the last 40 years. The government thinks it's cheaper to import it all and get rid of manufacturing and get rid of refineries. It's not just the Labor government's doing it, the coalition has done it as well. Now, as a country, we're just about crippled because of the fuel shortage. I'm just sick and tired of the lies, the deceit, the misrepresentation, and they all think, all the politicians think, we should all listen to them and believe everything they say. And people are getting sick of it. You look at the South Australian elections. Labor got 38% of the primary vote, One Nation got 22%, and the coalition got between 18 and 19%. The tides are turning slowly. The two parties at Labor and the coalition, we're sick of them. And the grubs in Canberra aren't listening. They aren't listening. We're sick of the lies, we're sick of the deceit, the misrepresentation, mistruths. You ask a question, they get asked a question by a journalist, and they waffle on for 2 or 3 minutes, talk about everything, but never answer the question. Oh, we're having meetings and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. I don't want the meetings. I want you to actually take action. That's what you're there to do. That's what you get paid the big money for. But this thing with the NDIA, just as a systemic of all governments, all bureaucracies, all public service. It's full of nepotism, cronyism, and it's like that old saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. They got their finger on the button. They don't want to take it off and give it to anyone else. They want control. They want the power. They want the money. And stuff everyone else. Now, where I live, Barnaby Joyce is our federal member. He's gone to One Nation, and I'll probably follow him with my vote. Because I'm sick of the coalition, I'm sick of Labor. They just mismanage everything. Look at the NDIA. Both the Labor Party and the coalition, they allowed all the state governments to cut their disability services and force everyone onto the NDIS. They did it. Every state done it. I was told by a disability service here in New South Wales that was run by the government, state government. Now the NDIS is here. Yeah, you have to join. You have to get onto the NDIS because we're going to be closing our services down. It's happened right around Australia. Why did the federal government allow this to happen? That's why it's blown out so much. The state governments have shut all their services down and forced everyone onto the NDIS. Now that's blown out. And they're blaming people with disabilities. And it's not the people with disabilities. It's the over-administration of the NDIA, the lies and deceit and the misrepresentation of truth, cover-ups from the NDIA, some dodgy service providers out there rorting it, committing fraud, and it's a poor old person with a disability cops kicking the guts, and the support workers. And the non-profit service providers, they're doing the best that they can for their clients. It's just a schmozzle. The successive governments have completely stuffed up the NDIS. We need to get back to its original architecture. Now, last year I did a thing on Estelle Lucas. She was a prostitute. She was self-diagnosed, autism, PTSD, depression, anxiety. She only had one thing medically diagnosed. She wrote her own doctor's report and gave it to the doctor. She's employing a brother with her NDIS funding, which she's not allowed to do. Why is she on the NDIS? She's probably earning between $150,000 to $300,000 a year as a prostitute. I don't get it. You know, when I was listening, I thought to myself, how can she self-diagnose all these things? And at the end of the third video, I have a master's in public health, and well, there you go. I don't believe a word that came out of her mouth. I truly don't. That's my opinion. I don't believe a word that came out of her mouth. And she's helped the brother get onto the NDIS. Now, Rebecca Fortney kicked her off without due process, which I thought was wrong. But she got back onto the NDIS and she got her funding increased. So, I don't know. That's probably one person that I know of that is on the NDIS that shouldn't be, in my opinion. But to say everyone on the NDIS is ripping it off, no. No. It's not our fault it's being mismanaged. not our fault that some people are rorting it and defrauding people. It's not our fault that some businesses have done the wrong thing and the government's had to bail them out so that people with disabilities don't lose services. But it's easy just to blame everyone on the NDIS. That's just really crappy, bad journalism. And that's what the government does, blames everyone else for their own shortcomings. But I will keep everyone informed of the stuff going through the OAIC about my complaint, and I'll keep everyone up to date with me withdrawing my consent for third-party contractors to access my information. They won't shut me up. They won't stop me. I'll just keep going. I'll take every legal means I can to do it. Because it's not just me it affects everyone. Might not happen today, tomorrow, or next week, but it will happen. You know, 1/3 of plan reviews end up in their funding being cut by an average of 22.5%. I'd like to know how much it costs the government for every $1 of funding a person with disability gets. How much does it cost the government to administer it? $10? $15? $5? $6? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. Anyway, that's my rant for the next week or two. I'm just sick of the way things are shaping up. I'm 62 years old. I'm getting towards the end of my life. I worry about the next generation and the ones after that. If somebody doesn't speak up and somebody doesn't do something about it, and then everyone's going to lose their rights. We'll end up like that book, 1984, where the government tells you what you can do, what you can't do, how you should and shouldn't do things, when you can and can't eat, what you can and can't eat, what you can and can't drink, what work you have to do. Unless we all start to stand up for ourselves. All right, might end it there. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time.